it's an important piece in there. Can I ask just a little bit more? Because I do want to talk about actually, well, let's go there. You've actually looked at 2026, looked at 2027, and then gone, it'd be really good for everybody, if we can, to go through each of the sequences, the activation, the Venus, and the Pearl, back to back over an extended period of time, like 12 plus months. And we go back to where you said, like, it's almost like where you're trying to encourage us to juice and like get out all the skeletons from the closet through 2026, because a lot of the work is shadow work as well. Sometimes that we're working through the gene keys, through our contemplation. And it's also the last time you'll be running this yourself as facilitating the retreats. Can you bring us into your intentionality behind what's coming through in this Sage experience and a little bit around what's happening here?
Yeah, it's many streams all kind of coming together, and convergence of streams in my life. And so I've just finished my final book. I mean, I might write some small books, and I've got a sort of fun mythological one I'm going to do. But this is like my final piece, and it's probably my magnum opus. I would say it's bigger than the Gene Key. The Gene Keys book is like it's sort of got me to this one, and it's another big book. I like big books. It's taken me 5 or 6 years to write it, and it's called The Sage, and it's my version of the I Ching. So it goes into like all the lines of the Gene Keys. So every Gene Key has 6 lines, and so it names every single one of those lines with a unique name, and then a meaning, and then a piece of poetry, and a contemplation, and an oracle piece of advice, and a mythos, which is where you want to kind of apply it to your chart. So if you have 29 lines, what's one of yours, Amrit?
I see a lot of 6s and 2s actually in my chart.
Do you know what's your kind of gene key and a line? One of your gene keys and lines that you could
cool.
Bring up. Anyone you want.
6.2. So I've got peace, diplomacy, conflict, but it's a 2 for my life's work.
Okay. So you have 6.2 life's work, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So this is that has a theme, right? So that line is called salutation. The eternal courtesy of the human smile that brings people together. Isn't that funny? There's your life's work right there. I don't think anyone is going to deny that.
You did say.
And
do you want to hear the
sutra? The sutra is called "The Colors of Culture." It's only 4 lines. Let us celebrate the sonorous spectrum of human greetings, the ever-present smile that circles the world, in time eroding all fear. Let us celebrate the sonorous spectrum of human greetings, the ever-present smile that circles the world, in time eroding all fear. So it's saying, like, think about like all the people going namaste, and people go morning, all the people that are just greeting each other with that smile every time, strangers all around the world, all the time, that smile is moving through humanity, that greeting, that welcome, and that is the essence of what we are. And in time, that energy will erode all fear, because that's the nature of humanity, the true nature. The fear is not our nature. That's what will be eroded. So that's what you're here to do.
Touch wood. My goodness, it's got me. I'm having a moment here. I'm conscious I'm in an interview, but I'm also like having a moment. I mean, because every podcast starts with the distinctive "you," and it's like that's the greeting, and it's like people have asked me, like, "Can you do the you?" Like when they interview me, and they're like, and I'm like, "Yeah, I can." And like, what does it mean? And I'm like, I don't know. It's just a uprising energy. It's like it's a way to greet. It's like a g'day, but it's. Yeah, interesting.
Well, let me read you just because everyone has a mythos. So in the new book, this is in my new series, in my new program next year. Everyone is going to get their mythos of their lines integrated into their program, right? So I'm giving out my book before it's published, bits of it anyway. So it's going to be integrated into the into the Golden Path program.
Oh wow! So the retreats aren't just the retreats as we've been running them for the last decade plus.
No.
They've actually got this additional component from the new book
Yeah,
woven
they've got
all the
the
way into
new
it.
acupuncture, deep kind of sage lines woven through them for the first time ever. So when you hit, if you're in the program, when you hit January and it's revealed, you'll be the first person to read your lines. So you'll get to see, well, I have, so that salutation so you have a mythos, right? A mythos is like your dharma. And this is what that line says. So it says, you are here to remind others of the beauty of the simple things in life. There were times as a child when we had unabashed levels of cheerfulness and trust in humanity. Your life is a quest to regain that level of trust and joyousness. Sometimes our disappointments are blessings in disguise as they remind us of the essential in life, that joy is all around us if we just pause to harvest it. There may also be an aspect of this joyousness that brings you together with a true soulmate in this life. That's it. Interesting that it mentions that last line, because they don't, these were like, written in a very sort of higher state. And there's no shadow in this book, by the way, at all. There's no shadow in it. It's like all the shadow's been taken out. It's a Gene Keys I Ching for the future human. This is the book of the future human. And I wanted to write a book that would carry us through the transition of the next few hundred years, so that there may be dark times ahead, right? And in dark times, I wanted people to have a book they could turn to remind them of what's coming, right? And so you can open this 800-page book with all the codes of the new human, and you can open it on any page, and it will give you a burst of light and poetry and truth and beauty, and it has, thousands and thousands of little sound bites like that one I just read you.
Sutras, yeah.
One of the reasons that I'm kind of doing this for the last time, because that book will probably be published in the summer sometime. And probably, hopefully, because it's got a big edit to go through, and then I'm tired at an online level. I've done these retreats for many years now, from pre-pandemic, and they've been hugely successful. Our online retreats have thousands of people always in them, and they're amazing. And people have got married in them, and people have died in them, and because they're long, right? We are like this group, Gene Keys, where we do long retreats. 4 months is the shortest, right? And it's because contemplation requires time, and it's not like you're online all the time. The retreat's just kind of the scaffolding of a transformational process you're going through. So you don't need to kind of make the scaffolding the thing. You're just using it to kind of propel you forwards in your transformational journey. And the beauty is you get to meet other people doing it around the world, a very global audience, which is very rich. And there's no better way than learning in company. There's just no better way.
The connections that you make, like the Gene Keys tribe, there's just medicine in the connections and the heart-centered.
It's beautiful.
Tribes.
I mean, people fall in love. People kind of go traveling and meet the person they met in Hawaii, or they go, and they're like, I gotta, it's like I hear these stories and it's amazing. And sometimes people get wound up by someone and they get an incredible lesson about themselves, because they get someone who pushes their button in a chat room with them or whatever. And, it's perfect. The teaching is always perfect for you. And so it's very rich. And anyway, so I'm a bit tired of like all the online stuff personally. So I'm wanting to move into a phase of Saturn return things where I'm actually physically present with people and I can look them in the eye. And I want to teach some of the higher teachings, which require presence and embodied presence. And some of them require silence. And so I want to actually sit with people and be with people and walk with people and celebrate with people around the world who've imbibed the Gene Keys or are committed. And it's interesting because, I don't know, like, of all the people that are interested in the Gene Keys, maybe, I'm going to make a guess, maybe 10% of them online retreats. And that just shows like the kind of percentage of people who are truly available to commit their energy into a long-term process. It doesn't mean you can't do it otherwise, but it's like that's the kind of steepest learning curve, the online retreats. And so you can make all kinds of excuses why you can't do them, or you can't, well, I'm not a people person, blah blah, I don't like being online. None of that actually is that's not true. It's not it doesn't take over your life. It's like it's very light. You adapt it to your life, and your excuses, whatever they are. I mean, if you can't afford it, that's one thing I totally understand, and we try and keep the prices incredibly low. And we have like programs that you can apply and stuff. So we're very considerate as much as we can be to people who can't afford these things. But essentially, it's it's a really powerful process, and many people have done it before, and so we're doing it again. I'm doing it for the last time myself, and then the retreats will obviously continue, but they'll continue with our guides and ambassadors and our kind of the next people who are rising up, and some of them you'll meet in this retreat. There's some amazing voices, younger voices around the Gene Keys who have incredible insights and gifts of communication and teaching. Some of them better than me. I always admit, like Elijah, who I work with, is way better at describing the profile than I am. I'm brilliant at describing what contemplation is, because that's my life. But it's ironic that I don't use the profile very much myself anymore, because I kind of I don't need it. so it's there as a reminder in the background when something comes up, or the cities are contemplations for me, like that are alive in me. They're no longer off the page, and the gifts, I want to bring them into my life. But yeah, so I'm wanting to bring a whole chapter of my life to a close, and so that's why I'm doing this. I'm doing these big, beautiful, long, crazy, wild retreats that will last the whole of 2026 with pauses. There's a month pause in May, and then there'll be a pause in December, and then we'll do the Pearl at the beginning of 2027, which is 4 months.
Which is and perfect, then we'll be like coming into the new energy with your Pearl.
Yeah, so we'll be hitting the Pearl, which is the dawn of collective intelligence and prosperity, planetary prosperity, and what that really means. So planetary prosperity has nothing to do with money. It's like money is of the old paradigm, I'm afraid to say. So the new paradigm is going to have to find another way. And anything that's still like, I don't know, it's like, even if you think of like, we have these like waves, like the crypto wave, and it's like, it's still using the same energy. It's still sucking from the grid. It's still, it's still of the old paradigm, right? So you can get very excited about them and go, they're going to save the world, but they're still of the old paradigm. They're still hugely complicated, and like, there are simpler ways of living on this earth. And that's what we, and I'm not saying we're going to go back to like our roots, but in some level, I think we are. I think we're going to go local, and we're going to be more connected to the land again. And we're going to have to learn how to get food and water and live in equilibrium again. And we can take parts of our technology with us into the future, but I think there'll be large parts of it that we won't be able to take with us, because they're centralized. Anything that's centralized is not going to come with us. Anything that relies on some massive data center somewhere is not going to come with us and it might last another 100 years, but then I think less than that probably, but eventually it's not going to come with us. That's my prophecy, that we think we're going to go into this sort of techno age, but that's based on a linear sense of progression of history. And we're about to have a massive curveball that changes our linear progression. And we're going to go forwards in a completely new way. And it's going to be difficult in the beginning, because it always is, difficult beginnings. But we're going to get there. You know, I mean, that's what I saw in the future human, that the future human is assured. You know, it's here. It's as assured as the oak tree is in the acorn, you know, and it's going to emerge. But patience is going to be needed. And it's the most exciting time to be alive.
It's interesting. I was going to ask, because some people see the singularity that's approaching, many philosophers have put it to 2030 as kind of like this humanity merges with this digital, you know, thing, and many people are sort of saying, whoa, slow down, everybody. But yeah, in terms of what I'm hearing you say is actually even though technological advancement is exponential, it's still an algorithm which we can map with our linear minds. What's coming is of a higher order.
Well, let's look at the dragonfly, right? You can't, like, when you look at the dragonfly nymph and you're like imagining what it could become.
Yeah, you
right?
don't.
If you don't know
Impossible.
about the future, you're like, all you do is imagine within its own dimension. Like, your thinking is limited to the dimension. You're like, oh yeah, technology. Oh yeah, we're going to go to Mars. Oh yeah, you're limited to the energy, technology, and the paradigm that you live in. You've lived in your whole life, and your ancestors lived in. You know, going back 400 years, right? And so it's like, imagine you're in the Middle Ages, and someone describes the world we're in now.
Yeah, right? Like a car. And you're like,
yeah.
what?
Yeah. So the next one is not going to, you know, you can't imagine it from within this one. It's not going to be you know, when you do it, you're like, oh yeah, we're going to have technology that's going to do it. But no, we are the technology. It's going to be of another order. As you said, it's going to be of another dimension. And that's very hard for our mind to get round, and a scientific, strategic, logical, linear mind cannot get there. It just can't.
Talking about the mind, I always say this. I think I've said this once before in a podcast with yourself. I affectionately remember my first ever Gene Keys online retreat, and looking down the barrel of the activation sequence and going 4 months, 4 keys, a contemplation for a key a month. And I'm like, surely like we could do this, you know, in 2 months and contemplate a key like every 2 weeks, you know, talking about patience. And then I remember the irony which struck me once I spent the 4 weeks contemplating a key. And then you brought us in and it was like, time for the next key, everybody. There's a meditation that sort of moves us in. And I was like, oh, but I wasn't.
I need more time.
I was still like, oh, it was just blooming and I was just starting to get the fragrance off the flower, and we're moving into the, I'm going to have to do this one again next year. And it's you know, it's interesting because it encourages you to slow down and hold space for you to do so. And there's some really profound lessons that open up just going through the, like, I don't want to call it madness, but the method behind the madness, poetically, pardon me for calling it madness. But yeah, there's something there. There really is something there. And it's interesting what you said as well about yourself, because from being an astrologer, what I've learned is when we're going through these Saturn returns, if, you know, oftentimes when we're aligned, you know, we tend to tire of the old to evolve into the new. And if we're misaligned, we actually start to get depressed. And I can see those two hallmarks. And it's not surprising to say, it's like, hey, like, it's time for me to wind down this battery to, you know, step into the next battery and see where that takes me. And yeah, I mean, inspiringly, we've got the
And because it's my last cycle with it, I'm throwing everything in, you know, and it's
tell,
2026, right? So
books,
I'm like,
new upgrades.
I'm going to bring in guest speakers. I'm going to do surprises, and we've got all kinds of different layers we're offering that we've never offered before. And and I'm going to weave in all aspects of the synthesis, including new teachings and codon rings and the 7 seals and the dream arc. And I'm just going to weave in the whole thing that I've never done it like this before. And new stuff as well, like that no one's ever even heard of. Like, you know, like I'm just going to bring in everything because it's like a finale for me. So I'm going to go out with it. Yeah.
I wanted to dial in a little bit to the nuances there, because for the longest while, as a Gene Keys guide for myself, when I encourage people to work with their Gene Keys, I've got this piece of wisdom that's dropped in from somewhere along the way. Which is, feel free to contemplate your shadow 15% of the time. Feel free to contemplate your gift I think it's 60%, 80% of the time. And then feel free to contemplate your city 5% of the time. Because the city is like, I kind of reserve it for ceremonial work when you're in that higher state consciousness, but in the day-to-day of the world that we live in is where we occupy. So 80% of the time, the gift's there. One of my favorite teachings of the Gene Keys is that the shadow is not a shadow, it's an opportunity, you know, and to remember that it's like, yep, access it, work with it for 15% of the time, because you can end up looking at your chart and just going, oh, these are all my shadows. Bah! And so it's like, no, 15% of the time, 80% gift, and then 5% left for the city. What I'm hearing in today's conversation, though, is that I probably need to take a whiteboard rubber and sort of rub some of that out as we're moving into 2027 and maybe adjust the percentages, because as you're talking about these sutras, the Sage book doesn't have the shadows in it. In your mind, are these percentages potentially up for being shaken up on the sketch and
I've no idea where that came from. It's the first time I've heard it, but
yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, I think there's something good about that, in that you focus on the gift, which is like a really empowering thing to focus on. How do I bring that creative gift into the world? And it is a very good thing to focus on, because it's a bit easier to get your head around your creative gift. You know, what is your creative gift? You know, Gene Key 32, the gift of preservation. What am I going to pour my preservation into? What am I going to preserve and creatively, you know, keep, you know, alive and enhance, and, you know, for the future? Like, where am I going to pour that in? You know, what's
you
value?
can actually work with that, and then things will be venerated. But if you go trying to run after veneration, which is the city,
so that's it's a nice idea. I think I wouldn't have too many rules. I think it's a good starting place, actually, and I would then allow the city to creep in at the level it wants to. I mean, I find now that I'm kind of contemplating the cities most of the time, right? You know, even when I'm contemplating the shadow, I'm like, underneath it is the city, right? Inside it is the city, right? And so so it's most of my contemplation is given to this incredible transcendent energy that lives inside me and that I'm a part of. And so, but I don't think that's necessarily the right way to begin if you're starting, because you need to get to understand the shadow and how it works and see it in your life. I mean, I'm second return. I've seen plenty of my shadow at work. And I've been in a marriage for 20 plus years, so I really have seen it, you know, and because that's where you see it in your committed relationships, or your family, and so yeah, that's a very healing thing. But I think allowing it organically to grow in its own way, and I think it's more like you said, you begin to smell the perfume more and more of those higher states, and then you become quite, you know, enamored of them. I mean, for me, it's like, it's in my quiet contemplation that I really tune in, especially early in the morning. This morning, I was out there early, 5:30, under the stars, and beautiful stars. And that's when I really smell the perfume of the cities, not just mine, but the whole of humanity's. And I really imbue myself with that, and I saturate myself with that, and then I carry it into the day, whatever I meet.